because your class is going to know. So I like to know in organic chemistry, which part do you find it's more difficult? So as far as the competitive examination is concerned.
ഈ പ്രൊഡക്റ്റുകളൊക്കെ കണ്ടുപിടിക്കത്തില്ലേ സാർ ഓരോ റിയാക്ഷൻ എന്നിട്ട്
Reaction mechanism.
yes sir. Product we will enter the
Okay.
product by okay sir.
Yes. Yeah. So you can easily find out two options. But where the problem comes, no, the stereochemistry. The stereochemistry outcome of the product. So you should understand what actually the mechanism. So you should know the different types of mechanisms, SN1, SN2, and which substrate will undergo SN1, SN2, E1 and E2. So so you have to carefully look at the reagents first. Okay, so you should know the role of reagents. Suppose they have given osmium tetroxide, it will oxidize the alkene into dihydroxylation. It's a syn dihydroxylation. So similarly, you should know each and every organic reagents. So one reagent may perform in a different way. It depends on the substrate, nature of the substrate, and the reaction medium. So you should be very careful. Then any other topic? For reaction mechanism, you should know all the mechanisms: SN1, SN2, E1, E2, SNAR, SNI. Should be very familiar. Then you should know the type of substrate and the type of reagents. You can divide the reagents into four: okay, oxidizing reagents, reducing reagents, and organometallic reagents, and miscellaneous reagents. So the miscellaneous mean electronic reduction, alkylation, and all. Okay, so I have a PPT. If time permits, I shall discuss the organic reagents part by tomorrow. Any other topic? So you want me to take from organic chemistry? So I think they have covered all the important topics from organic chemistry. So aromaticity, they might have been taken, and reaction mechanism, and I have taken conformations, stereochemistry, rearrangement reactions, and all. Okay, please let me know so that I can take by tomorrow. Okay, we shall start today's session. So is it visible? My PPT, UV visible spectroscopy, an approach towards a competitive exam. Is it visible?
Actually, yeah, your screen is visible. So now you
Okay.
open PPT or the Google.
PPT, yeah.
Okay.
So the principal applications of UV spectroscopy, I have shown outline slide. Is it not visible?
Can someone say yes? Yeah, it's visible. It's visible. So there is a delay. Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay. So if there is any problem, please let me know. Let me know through WhatsApp, okay, so that I can manage. So very good morning to all. Today we are going to discuss ultraviolet visible spectroscopy. So in exam point of view, I'm going to discuss for competitive examination, and at the end of today's session, I will be discussing some questions from TAFR, IIT JAM, and some Central University questions. Okay. So this is the outline of today's talk. So the instrumentation and the basic principle of UV visible spectroscopy and the different types of electronic transitions. So it is sometimes called electronic spectroscopy because mainly, so the electronic transition involves, and and there are so many factors which affects the UV visible spectra. So I'm going to discuss each factors with an example, and the importantly the Woodward-Fisher selection rule. So you can predict the lambda max value theoretically by using this rule. Okay, I'm going to explain with an examples and the applications of UV visible spectroscopy. And as I said earlier, I'm going to discuss some questions from IIT JAM and TAFR, that's the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and some common teacher recruitment board questions. And I'm going to give one link. So there is a free online examination, you can attend that. So the history of color and light. So it begins with the era of Isaac Newton. So he refracts white light with a prism, and he resolved into several components, namely red, orange, yellow, green, and blue and violet. So that's called FGR. So the sunlight contains a spectrum. It was discovered by Sir Isaac Newton in the year 1666. So he only coined the word spectrum. You are all very familiar with the spectrum, spectroscopy, and electromagnetic radiation and all. So he was the person, he coined the word spectrum. So spectroscopy, what do you mean by spectroscopy? So it is the study of interaction between electromagnetic radiation with a matter. So spectroscopy, it involves the absorption of electromagnetic radiation. So you all know UV spectroscopy, FTIR spectroscopy, NMR spectroscopy, and MAS. It is not actually a spectroscopy. Okay, so MAS is a spectrometry. So mass spectrometry. If anyone written mass spectroscopy, it is wrong. Okay, so mass, it is a spectrometry. So do you know the difference between spectroscopy and spectrometry, and why we are calling a mass, it says mass spectrometry, not a mass spectroscopy? Anyone have any idea? Okay, I'll tell you. So in mass spectrometry, what happens? So we are bombarding the molecule. So with the high energy electron beam. So in mass, we are not using any electromagnetic radiation. Okay, in UV visible, FTIR, and NMR, we are using electromagnetic radiation, which involves the absorption of EMR, so that you can get a different spectra. In the case of mass, you are passing a high energy electron beam to the molecule. So there's a bombardment. Okay, so that is a different story. And electromagnetic radiation. So electromagnetic radiation, simply EMR, it is any form of radiant energy that is propagated as a transverse wave. So what is a transfer? I will explain in the next slide. So it vibrates perpendicular to the direction of propagation. So as the name itself tells, electromagnetic radiation, these possess both electrical and magnetic field. Look at this. So this is electromagnetic radiation. Look at. So it is perpendicular to the direction of propagation. Okay. Look at this. So the distance between the two successive maxima. So this distance is known as a wavelength. So this is crust and trough. So this is electrical field oscillation, and this is a magnetic field oscillation, because this is a perpendicular to each other. The distance between the two successive crust or two successive curve is known as a wavelength. It is denoted as lambda. So the unit is an nanometer. It is usually expressed in nanometer. This is known as wavelength, and the height is known as amplitude. Okay. So the electromagnetic radiation, it possesses certain amount of energy. So it is nothing but a form of energy. So this energy is ultimately indivisible. Unit of radiation, they are called as a photon. So which is related to the famous equation E is equal to h nu. Further, nu is a frequency, which is related with the velocity of light. Okay, nu is equal to c by lambda. So energy is equal to hc by lambda. Here h is a Planck constant. So nu is a frequency. C is the velocity of light. 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second, and lambda is the wavelength. Look at this. This is electromagnetic radiation. So in the left end, you can see it's a gamma rays. So you should remember this order. So there are so many questions from this order alone. They have, they have asked which is having a higher energy or which is having lower energy, which is having higher wavelength. Okay, like that you can expect possible questions from any competitive examinations. So you should remember gamma rays, secondly X-rays, and this is vacuum ultraviolet and near ultraviolet visible light. So near infrared and far infrared and radio waves. So from left to right, so wavelength increases. Okay, wavelength is lambda. The lambda value is increases from left to right. There is a gamma rays to radio waves. We know. So wavelength and energy, they are inversely proportional. So you can see this slide. Here you can see energy is inversely proportional to lambda. Okay. So you should remember this. So energy is always inversely proportional to wavelength, that is lambda. If energy is increasing, then lambda max will be very low. You can see here. So as from left to right, wavelength increases and energy decreases. So this is possessing longer wavelength. That is a radio waves possessing longer wavelength, and gamma rays possess shorter wavelength. So what happens actually? So when a photon h nu hits a molecule, and the molecule is absorbed some sort of energy, and it goes to the higher excited state. Please always remember. So whenever a molecule is in a higher energy, it is not a stable one. So it has to come back to the original state by losing its energy. You might have studied Japlansky diagram. Please remember Japlansky diagram. Okay, so when a photon, it's a molecule, it absorbs energy and goes to the higher energy state. Okay, so in higher energy state, the molecule is not a stable one. So what happens? It has to come back to the original state, that is the ground state. So it may lose energy by in the form of heat or light. Okay, and it may undergo singlet to triplet and internal conversion, intersystem crossing and all, fluorescence and phosphorescence. This is basics you might have studied. So ultraviolet visible light has promote the electrons to a higher energy state from HOMO to LUMO. So HOMO is the highest occupied molecular orbital to the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital. So the difference between these two is known as a band gap. And look at this. Here this is a HOMO of butadiene, so in ethylene. Look at this, CH2 double bond CH2. So 2 pi electrons are there. So this is the highest occupied molecular orbital. This is HOMO. So when it absorbs energy at 185 nanometer, so the electrons promotes to the higher energy level. That is LUMO. That is a pi star. So this is the lowest unoccupied because there are no electrons. Unoccupied molecular orbital. This is HOMO to LUMO excitation. And look at this energy gap. Look at this energy gap. It is very high. So when compared to butadiene, look at this. So this is a butadiene. So 1,3 butadiene, and look at this HOMO here. So psi2 is a HOMO. So this is a wave function. Psi1, psi2, psi3, psi4. It's a wave function. Psi1, psi2 is a bonding, and psi3 and psi4 is an anti-bonding. And look at, there are 4 pi electrons here, 2 and 2. So you can put according to all the rules, Hund's rule and thing. Psi1, so 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 pi electrons in its bonding orbitals. So after absorption of energy, so around 250 nanometer. So one of this electron goes to higher energy level, that is Psi3 needs anti-bonding. So this is a LUMO. One electron goes to this, and look at this energy gap here. So energy gap is decreased when compared to ethylene, because as the pi electrons increases, as the conjugation increases, the energy gap between HOMO and LUMO decreases. So that's what I'm trying to say. So the alternative name, as I mentioned earlier, this is electronic spectroscopy. So because it involves the promotion of electrons. So the electrons are sigma electrons, pi electrons, it's maybe non-bonded electrons from its ground state to the next higher energy state. So you can classify the UV visible spectra into various regions. So far our vacuum UV, it's 10 to 200 nanometer. And near our quartz ultraviolet region, it is 200 to 380 nanometer. So visible region, so this is more important. In some textbook, they have mentioned 400 to 800 nanometer. So 400 to 800 nanometer. So it is called a visible region. And this is the simplest electromagnetic spectrum I have given. So you remember this. So gamma rays, so shorter wavelength. So radio is a longer wavelength. So after that gamma rays, you can see X-rays and ultraviolet. So ultraviolet can be classified into three: ultraviolet A, ultraviolet B, and ultraviolet C. So based on their wavelength and energy. Look at this ultraviolet C. So this is a dangerous, more harmful to human beings. Ultraviolet C. Look at the lambda value, wavelength. So it is having a lesser wavelength, so it means it is having higher energy. So that's why, so this ultraviolet C is a harmful radiation. Okay. So it may cause a skin cancer and all. So visible and infrared, so microwave and radio wave. So regarding the instrumentation part, so hydrogen or deuterium lamp they have used for ultraviolet region. For visible range, so tungsten lamp can be used. So a few questions from the source I have seen from computer examinations. What are the source which are using in UV visible spectroscopy? So for UV region, so hydrogen or deuterium lamp it may be used, and for visible region, tungsten lamp can be used. It covers the visible range. And the filters. So there are two optical filters they are used in UV visible spectroscopy. So one is absorptive filter and second one is a dichroic filters. So that is a reflective filters and the monochromator. The role of monochromator is very important in UV visible spectroscopy. So as the name itself tells, it's a Greek word. So mono means it's a single, chroma it's a color. Okay, so it produces a beam of light with a very narrow bandwidth that particularly allows a single wavelength. So you can see here. So in UV visible, there are so many. Based on their energy, can pass through these filters. But the monochromator allows a single wavelength. So, but if you want 320 nanometer, it particularly allows 320 nanometer. So I will explain the next slide. So then cuvette. So this is a sample cell. So it is usually made up of quartz. So because you cannot use a glass, you cannot use a glass as a sample cell. So because glass is not a transparent to ultraviolet radiation. It may absorb some UV radiation. So that's why they have used quartz. And detectors. So there are so many detectors are available. So the commonly available detectors are phototube and photo multiplier tube, silicon diode array, and charged coupled device CCD array. So there is a common detectors used in various UV visible spectroscopy. Look at this. So this is the schematic representation of instrumentation here, and this is source of deuterium, and this is source of tungsten. Okay, after passing through its mirror, you can see here it passes through its filter, and it filters, it passes through the monochromator, and here you can see, so monochromator allows a particular wavelength, not all the wavelength. So the role of monochromator, mono means it's a single, chroma it's a color, so it allows a single wavelength to beam splitter. So after passing through it passes through the sample as well as the reference. So reference is nothing but, so the solvent in which your sample is dissolved. Suppose I'm going to take spectrum of aniline in any solvent. Okay, for you have to dissolve your sample in any solvent. For example, I'm taking methanol. Okay, so here you can take simple methanol as a reference, and here this is your sample is dissolved in methanol. Okay, so after passing through it, there is a detector. So photodiode is there, and after data processing, you can get your UV visible spectra. Okay, so there are so many electronic excitations are there. So these are different types of electronic transitions. Here you can see sigma electrons and pi electrons. This is a non-bonding electrons, and this is pi star and sigma star. So these two are bonding. So bonding electrons possess lesser energy, lower energy. So can compare the energy level here, and the non-bonding electrons and pi and sigma star. So these are all anti-bonding orbitals. And look at the transitions which requires lesser energy. So this is also very important. Here you can find N2 pi star. So N2 pi star requires lesser energy, and look at the energy required for sigma to sigma star transition. So sigma to sigma star transition requires higher energy. Then so pi to pi star and N2 sigma star. So this is the increasing energy order of electronic transitions. You should remember this order. Okay, so sigma to sigma star requires higher energy, because you can see here it is sigma and here it is sigma star. So it requires higher energy than the other possible electronic transitions. And look at the N2 pi star, it requires lesser energy. So N2 pi star, look at this difference between these two energy levels. N2 pi star requires lesser energy. If you remember these two, then you can easily predict the correct increasing or decreasing order of their various electronic transitions. So for example, sigma to sigma star. So what types of molecule will undergo this type of transitions? So sigma is a sigma electron. Okay, it is a sigma bond. So alkanes possess only a sigma bond. That is a single bond. So this will undergo sigma to sigma star transitions. If you take ethane, CH3, you can find only sigma electrons, sigma bonds are there. So this molecule will undergo sigma to sigma star transitions. And N to sigma star. So N, it's a non-bonding. So there should be a lone pair of electrons. So take halogens or any alcohols, can take alcohols, ROH. So oxygen, there are two non-bonding electrons or lone pair of electrons. So this will undergo N2 sigma star, because there is a sigma bond is there and non-bonding electrons are also there. So this type of molecule will undergo N2 sigma star. Similarly, nitrogen containing compounds, sulfur containing compounds, halogens. For example, you can take CH3F. In fluorine, there are lone pair of electrons. Sigma bond is there. So this type of molecule will also undergo N2 sigma star transitions. Then pi to pi star transitions. So pi electrons. which means there should be unsaturated bond. There is a carbon-carbon double bond should be there. Okay. So this type of molecules will undergo pi to pi star transition. Similarly, alkynes. So alkyne is also having a pi electrons. It will undergo pi to pi star. So aromatic rings, benzene, and carbonyl compounds. You can take carbonyl compounds, C double bond O. So this is also having a pi electrons. So this will also undergo pi to pi star. And also it can undergo N2 sigmas in the N2 pi star. I will explain. Look at this carbonyl group. Here in oxygen there are pi electrons. Okay. So sorry, in oxygen is a lone pair of electrons. And here there are pi electrons. So this carbonyl group will undergo both N2 pi star transition and pi to pi star transitions. But among these two, which is having a higher, which is having a lower energy, N2 pi star or pi to pi star? Anyone which is having a lesser energy? For you can take formaldehyde or acetaldehyde.
N2 pi star lesser energy.
Yeah, N2 pi star, it requires lesser amount of energy. So this is a predominant transition in carbonyl compounds. Look at this, how it happens, pi to pi star transition. And look at this, this is N2 pi star transition. So normally for N2 pi star transition, for carbonyl group, that is aldehyde and ketones, usually appeared around 270 to 300 nanometer. You remember this value, this lambda max value, 270 to 300 nanometer for N2 pi star transition in the case of aldehyde and ketones. So this lambda max value may vary, depends on the substituents present in ketone or aldehyde. Okay, so we are going to discuss the a lot of factors which will affect the lambda max value and also its intensity and all. So this is a common absorption maxima for various solvents. So take acetonitrile, that is CH3CN. So the lambda max value is 190. Take water, so the value is 191. Similarly, they have given various solvents. Okay, you do not need to remember this value and all. So importantly, Lambert's law. Okay, so when you study UV spectroscopy, Lambert law, Beer law, okay, and the combined Beer-Lambert law is very important. So Lambert law, when a monochromatic light, so this is very important, not a polychromatic light. Okay, so the condition is it should be monochromatic light. It should it should allow only a particular wavelength, that is called monochromatic light. When it passes through a solution, the rate of decreases of intensity of radiation, because it may absorb some energy. Okay, then it will decrease. So that rate of decrease of intensity is directly proportional to path length. There is a thickness of path length. Look at this. Simply you can say absorbance is directly proportional to path length of a cell. It is known as Lambert law. So how do you remember this Lambert law? So the Lambert law, it starts from L. So L means length. So Lambert law is directly proportional to path length. You can simply remember in this way. So look at this here. So this is I0. So capital I means intensity. So this is the intensity of incident light, and this is your cuvette. So this is your sample cell. Okay. So I have dissolved my sample A in any solvent. So I'm passing the light. Okay. So it passes through the solution, and some amount of light will be absorbed by the solution, because there are some absorbing species are there in your sample. Okay, so it may absorb some sort of some amount of light, and some will be transmitted. So this is known as IT. So intensity of transmitted light. And look at this. So this is your path length. Usually So this length is a 1 centimeter. Okay. So you cuvette. I know I told you know it's a sample that is called a cuvette, which is made up of quartz. So this length is usually 1 centimeter. Okay. So Lambert law says that when a monochromatic light passes through its solution, so the intensity of absorption is directly proportional to path length. If you increase the path length, what happens? Suppose this is the cuvette cell. Here it is 2 centimeter. What happens? If you increase the path length, the absorbance value will also increase. Okay. And Beer law. So he says that so when a monochromatic light passes through a solution, the decrease of intensity of radiation is directly proportional to the concentration of a solution. So in Lambert law says that the rate of decrease of intensity of radiation is directly proportional to path length, and Beer law says that it depends on the concentration of a solution as well. Look at this. So absorbance is directly proportional to concentration. So this is the combined law. So Beer-Lambert law. It is directly proportional to concentration of the your absorbing species as well as the path length of a sample cell. So this is the mathematical representation of a Beer-Lambert law. Absorbance is equal to log of I0 divided by IT. So I0 is the intensity of incident light. So before passing through the solution, that is called I0, and IT is the intensity of transmitted light. So after passing through the solution, what is the intensity value? Is equal to epsilon into C into L. So epsilon is the molar extinction coefficient. So C is the concentration of your solution. L is the path length of a cuvette of a sample tube. Look at this. So you should remember this mathematical Beer-Lambert law, mathematical expression. So A is absorbance is directly proportional to, look at this, absorbance is directly proportional to concentration as well as your path length, the sample cell length. Okay. I0 is the intensity of incident light. IT is the intensity of transmitted light. So epsilon is the molar absorptivity or molar extinction coefficient. C is the concentration of a cell. So sorry, concentration of your solution, and L is the path length. So there is a linear relationship between your solution concentration with absorbance. You can find, and there is some deviation. So that is called the limitations of Beer-Lambert law. When there is a deviation, I'll tell you. So only in the presence of monochromatic light it obeys. Beer-Lambert law obeys only in the presence of monochromatic light, and it is only applicable for dilute solutions. Okay. If there is a concentrated solutions, what happens? Look at this. At a higher solutions of high concentration, so due to electrostatic interaction between your species in your solution, so this law will not be applicable, because when there is a close proximity, so there exists some electrostatic interactions, hence it doesn't obey. And if there is any scattering of light due to particulates in your sample, so your sample should be completely miscible in your solvent. If there is some any particulates in your particulate in the sample, then it may not obey. Then there will be deviation. And if there is any change in the refractive index of a medium, then it will not obey. And also if there is any fluorescence or phosphorescence in your sample, when the absorbing molecules are in equilibrium, that is if there is any keto enol tautomerism, then This Beer-Lambert law will not obey. And also, if there is some solute solvent interactions, so there may be the possibility of formation of complex through association or dissociation, then this will not obey. Okay, this is the limitations of Beer-Lambert law. Then important terminologies in UV visible spectroscopy is a chromophore, oxochrome, bathochromic shift or red shift, hypsochromic or blue shift, hyperchromic and hypochromic shift. So I'm going to explain each term, each terminology, the examples. So chromophore. So as I said earlier, chroma it's a color, 4 is any bearing group. Okay. So this is the part of the molecule when exposed to visible light. So this will absorb and reflect a certain color. So that is a chromophore. It's responsible for a color of a compound. So they must contain one or more unsaturated group. So the examples for chromophore can see it should possess an unsaturated. There is a carbon-carbon double bond should be there. Then only it will absorb some sort of light from this visible region and will reflect a certain color. Can see carbon-carbon double bond or alkynes, a cyanide, a C double bond N, or carbonyl or azo group N double bond N. So you might have seen there are a lot of organic dyes. So in organic dyes, so there is a presence of azo group. I will explain which are the dyes which are having a N double bond N. Look at this. So this is a common chromophore, and look at the lambda max value here. So amine through its lone pair of electrons and equals ethylene, ketone, aldehyde, nitro group. These are all common chromophores. Then oxochromes. So oxochromes. So the Greek word oxo means to increase. So it is a functional group when attached to a chromophore. It changes both the lambda max value and its intensity. Look at this carefully. Chromophore and oxochrome. So chromophore is responsible for color of any compound. And oxochrome, it is a functional group. When attached to a chromophore, then it increases or it alters the wavelength and the intensity of absorption. And oxochrome does not itself give any color. Please remember, an oxochrome is an auxiliary group only to increase the lambda max or intensity of absorption, but it does not itself absorb any radiation, so it does not give any color. So these possess lone pair or unshared or non-bonded electrons, so that it can interact with the pi electrons of the chromophore. So chromophore means it should possess unsaturated bond. We have seen in the previous slides. So carbon-carbon double bond, it's an example for chromophore. So I am going to attach any substituents here. For example, X. So X does not itself absorb any radiation. It does not give any color. But when it is present in the attached to chromophore, then it will increase the lambda max value, or it will decrease in lambda max value, or it can increase the intensity of absorption or decreases. So how it happens? So there is an interaction through its lone pair of electrons with its pi electrons, with pi bonds, so that there is a n pi conjugation is there. That's why it alters the wavelength as well as the intensity of absorption. So the examples are oxochrome, NH2, amine is a oxochrome, and hydroxyl group, and alkoxy and thiol. So there are so many examples. Here I have given few examples for oxochromes. So here oxochrome does not absorb, that the amine group does not absorb any radiation. But when it is attached to a chromophore, it will increase the lambda max value. Similarly, hydroxyl and alkoxy and thiol groups. Look at this. So this is a benzene. So look at the lambda max value, 255 nanometer. Okay. So here there are double bond is there. There's a conjugated delocalization of pi electrons here. So it shows a lambda max value of 255 nanometer. And look at this hydroxyl group. So hydroxyl group is the oxochrome. So when it is attached to chromophore, look at the value. Lambda max value for unsubstituted. Here benzene only 255 nanometer. When benzene is attached with the hydroxyl group, it's a phenol. So look at the lambda max value. Lambda max value increases. So to 270 nanometer. And look at this phenoxide ion. After removal of a proton, so this is phenoxide ion. So phenoxide ion. So further delocalization is there, and also you can see the lambda max value 287 nanometer. And compare aniline and benzene. So aniline NH2, it is an oxochrome. Because oxochrome, it should possess a lone pair of electrons. You should remember chromophore, unsaturated bond should be there. Oxochrome, lone pair should be there. So here it is a oxochrome. Look at the lambda max value here. In benzene, it is only 255 nanometer. And look at aniline, so 280 nanometer. So after attachment of NH2 group to the benzene ring, so the lambda max value is increased to 280 nanometer. And these are all called oxochrome, and these are called a chromophore. Look at this. Whether this is a chromophore or oxochrome. Anyone?
Oxochrome.
Very good. So oxochrome. Sorry, it is not an oxochrome. Oxochrome, there should be lone pair of electrons. Similar amines. This is a diazo. So this is a functional group. And look at this. The circled one is a oxochrome. And this is a chromophore. And this is the modern yellow. This is azo dye. Similarly here, amine. So lone pair of electron is there. So an oxygen lone pair of electrons are there. And look at this nucleus. And this is a chromophore. So this is anthraquinone dye. So this is blue in color. Why it shows color? Because of the presence of chromophore and oxochrome. Okay. So there are so many organic dyes are there. You can find the responsible group for its color. Then various shifts in UV spectroscopy. Look at this. So this is the UV spectra. Here from left to right, so the lambda max values increase. So from 100 to 800 nanometer. And look at this y-axis. So this is intensity of absorption. So absorption of intensity. Here it is wavelength. In x-axis, it's a wavelength. So lambda, the unit is nanometer. So if the lambda max value is increased to longer wavelength, then it is called a bathochromic shift. If the lambda max value is decreased, then it is known as hypsochromic shift or blue shift. If the intensity, so here it is like this, then it is a bathochromic. Here it is hypsochromic. If suppose the intensity is increased like this, then it is hyperchromic. If the intensity is decreased, then it is hypochromic shift. You should remember these 4 shifts. I tell you, how do you remember this? Here, so 200 to 400 nanometer, it is UV region. Then 400 to 800 nanometer, so visible region. Okay, so you know visible region. So WebGR. Okay, then look at this red R. It is having a higher lambda max value. It is having a longer wavelength. Okay, so if the lambda max value is increased to right side, that is if it increase the lambda max value is increased, it is known as redshift, because the lambda max value. Okay, so I mean for red, look at the lambda max value, it is around 800 nanometer. So it is known as a redshift. So you can simply remember BR. BR, here you can put HB. So BR, bathochromic redshift. HB means hypsochromic blue shift. Because sometimes they may ask whether it's a redshift or bathochromic shift. So you should remember this one. So this is the easiest way you can remember BR and HB. So BR you can simply remember bromine. So this is a symbol. You can simply remember BR, and here you can simply remember hemoglobin HB. So in this way you can, it's a mnemonic, you can simply remember in this way: bathochromic red shift, hypsochromic blue shift. And you know this hypertension. Hypertension means, hyper means increase. Okay, so the intensity, if intensity is increased, it's a hyperchromic. So just opposite to hyper, it's a hypo, the decrease of intensity. So if you remember in this way, you will never forget the various shifts of UV visible spectroscopy. So hyperchromic, hyper, you remember the term hypertension. So the increase of absorption intensity. Hyper, just opposite, hypo, that is a decrease in absorption intensity. Bathochromic, BR. Okay, bathochromic, BR. So red, so wavelength for red is around 700 to 800 nanometer. So there is an increase in wavelength. And hypsochromic, HB, so blue shift, there is a decrease in wavelength. Okay, then what are the factors which affects the position of UV visible spectra? So effect of conjugation, effect of steric hindrance, effect of solvents, and effect of pH. So these are all important factors which will affect the position and intensity. So effect of conjugation. So as the conjugation increases, the energy required for electronic transition decreases. So that's what we have seen in the case of ethylene and 1,3-butadiene. As the conjugation increases, look at this. So conjugation is directly proportional to lambda max. So energy is inversely proportional to lambda. Look at this. Here butadiene, hexadiene. So as the conjugation increases, look at the energy. Energy for promotion of HOMO to LUMO, the values decreases. Okay. Here I have given some examples. Look. So conjugation means there should be alternative double bond and single bond. Okay. Look at this here: double bond, single bond, double bond, single bond. This is known as a conjugation. And look at the lambda max value here. So as the conjugation increases, lambda max value is also increases. And what happens to the energy? Energy, what happens to the energy?
Decreases.
Yes, energy decreases. Okay. You should remember the relationship. Energy is inversely proportional to lambda. Okay, lambda max. And look at this. So this is a carbonyl group. If the carbonyl group is conjugation with the carbon-carbon double bond, what happens to the energy level? It further decreases. Okay, you can take the example of acetone. Here, the N2 pi star transition. So I mentioned earlier there are two types of electronic transitions possible in the case of carbonyl group. There are lone pair of electrons, so it can undergo N2 pi star. There are pi electrons, so pi 2 pi star. So among these two, N2 pi star transition requires lesser energy. So lesser energy means the larger lambda max value. Look at the lambda max value for N2 pi star transition, 274 nanometer. For pi 2 pi star transition, the lambda max value is 195 nanometer. Suppose, so if you replace one hydrogen with the vinyl group, so this is methyl vinyl ketone, and look at the lambda max value here. Here it is 274. The lambda max value is further increased for N2 pi star transition. And similarly, you can see for pi 2 pi star transition also, the lambda max value is increased, the energy is decreased. Okay. Then effect of steric hindrance can consider still bean, that is a cis still bean and trans still bean. Here, for most effective overlap, the coplanarity is essential. So then only it leads to the effective overlapping of pi orbitals, and the ease of pi to pi star transition is increased. So coplanarity is required. In the case of cis still bean, you can see there are two phenyl groups. So there is a bulky. So there is a steric crowding. So due to its crowding, because the bulky groups are on the same side, the planar geometry is distorted. And here in trans stilbene, so the bulky groups are on opposite to each other, on the opposite side. So there is a effective overlapping of pi pi orbital overlapping, which results in the coplanarity. So as you can see here, if coplanarity is there, then there is a most effective overlapping, and it appears in the longer wavelength. It requires lesser energy. Look at the lambda max value. It is 295 nanometer. Cis still been only 280 nanometer, because it requires higher energy. It requires lower energy, and hence appeared in the longer wavelength 295 nanometer. So you can easily distinguish cis and trans by the use of UV visible spectroscopy. If it is a trans isomer, the lambda max value will be high. If it is cis isomer, the lambda max value will be very low. Okay, so this is how you can differentiate cis and trans. You cannot differentiate these two isomer by any other methods. Spectroscopy, you can differentiate cis stilbene and trans stilbene, and the effect of solvents. So in the case of polar solvent, for example, water or methanol, it's a polar solvent. Here, pi to pi star transition. So here there is a stabilization of excited state by dipole interaction of the solvents. Here N2 pi star transition will undergo blue shift. Please remember, pi 2 pi star transition, there is a red shift. N2 pi star transition, there is a blue shift. In the case of polar solvents, if it is non-polar solvent, for example, hexane, it is a non-polar solvent, and also benzene. So in this case, pi 2 pi star transition will undergo blue shift. There is a decrease in lambda max value. For N2 pi star transition, there is a red shift. It is the opposite to the polar solvent. You remember any one of this? You remember this one, polar solvent. Polar solvent, if there is pi to pi star transition, okay, if you record the spectra in a polar solvent, in a methanol, then red shift will appear. For example, so this is the lambda max value of a sample X. Okay. For example, it's around 220 nanometer. So I am recording a spectra of X in methanol. So methanol is the polar solvent, or I'm taking a spectra in water. Okay, that's the best example. So what happens? There is a redshift of pi to pi star transition. Redshift means there is increase in lambda max value. It will appear around 240 or 250 nanometer for n pi to pi star. If there is n to sigma star transition, so then there is a blue shift. So the value will decrease. It comes around 210 nanometer. I hope it is clear. This is just opposite to the non-polar solvent. In the case of non-polar solvent, if you take a spectra of X in carbon tetrachloride or hexane, then N to pi star transition will undergo redshift. Pi to pi star transition will undergo blue shift. Okay. So this is interaction of polar solvent, and this is interaction for non-polar solvent. So how this is the interaction. And look at this acetone. So this is the spectrum, UV spectra of acetone. Polar solvent, as I mentioned, water. You can take water. So what happens? So for N to pi star transition, there is a blue shift. Look at this. Blue shift means there is a decrease of lambda max value. Here it is 264 nanometer in polar solvent. So here we have mentioned only N to pi star transition. No pi to pi star transition. Please remember. So N to pi star transition requires lesser energy. So I have shown only one transition, that is N to pi star transition for acetone. In polar solvent, there is a blue shift. In non-polar solvent, hexane, there is a red shift. Look at this. The value is increased. Lambda max value is increased to 79 nanometer. Then effect of pH. What happens to pH? Look at this. This is a phenol. The presence of a base, it obstructs a proton. Then there will be a formation of phenoxide ion. So phenoxide ion will undergo resonance structure. So it goes on. So in the case of phenoxide ion, the lone pair on the oxygen atom is delocalized over the pi electron systems of aromatic ring. Thereby, conjugation increases. So as you know, the conjugation increases, the absorption maximum shifted to the longer wavelength, that is a red shift. Because as the conjugation increases, what happens? The energy decreases, so lambda max value will increase. Here you can see, so phenol in acidic medium. So look at the lambda max value. It appears at 210 and 270 nanometer. Look at this for phenoxide ion. Look at the value here. It is increased to 235 nanometer. For second transition, it increased up to 287 nanometer. Lambda max value has increased. So this is to the resonance. So this is the effect of pH. Similarly, aniline. So aniline in acidic medium, what happens? In aniline, there is a possibility of resonance through its lone pair of electrons. Okay. Suppose if I'm adding acid, what happens? There is a protonation, NH3 plus. Whether there is a possibility of resonance, compare aniline and anilinium ion. This is anilinium ion. Compare these two. Here there is a possibility of delocalization of its lone pair of electrons. Whether is there any possibility of delocalization of electrons, lone pair of electrons in anilinium ion? Anyone?
Sir, unlinear ion is the middle one. Anna?
Yeah, this is a resonance structured one. I'm asking the question. This is a circled one. So this is aniline. Protonation means NH3. Here it is plus. This is anilinium ion, and this is the resonance structure of anilinium ion. Okay, you do not confuse these two structures. I am asking these two. A can I can give the name B. Whether
We have,
yeah, whether delocalization is possible in B,
yes, sir.
in B, delocalization.
Yes, possible.
How? Because the lone pair is responsible for delocalization. In aniline, it is there. In anilinium ion,
Vacant p orbital is there in.
yeah, but no lone pair of electrons. Here, what happens? Protonation in acid medium. What happens? So this is gets protonated. Okay, then there is no possibility of conjugation of lone pair of electron to the aromatic system. Here there is a possibility of delocalization because lone pair is there. Here there is no lone pair. It gets protonated. It's a Lewis base, no aniline. Electron pair donor. That's the concept. Please remember the acid base concept. So Lewis base. So Lewis acid means electron pair acceptor. Okay, Lewis base, electron pair donor. It donates and it coordinates with the proton. How? Through its lone pair. So it loses its lone pair of electrons. It coordinates with the proton. So there is no possibility of delocalization. Please remember. Please recall your basic concepts. Then you will understand. What happens as a result? Blue shift is absorbed. Is it clear? Here there is a possibility of delocalization, and after protonation there is no possibility of this the conjugation between the lone pair of electrons with its aromatic ring system. Look at the lambda max value here and look at this value. In acidic medium there is a decrease in lambda max value. Is there any doubt in this slide? So in a simplified way, I can explain you, if there is lone pair of electrons, there is a possibility of delocalization of its lone pair of electron to its aromatic ring system. Okay, so it increases the conjugation. So lambda max value will be very high, will be more. After protonation, what happens? There is no lone pair of electron. So there is no conjugation between the lone pair. There is no lone pair at all, and there is no possibility of conjugation through its aromatic ring system. Hence, lambda max value will be decreased. That's what happens. 235 to 203 nanometer. There is a blue shift because there is a decrease. It's a blue shift. Is it clear? Because there are two questions from the effect of pH alone from Central University of very central universities. The effect of pH of aniline itself, there are two questions. What happens after its protonation? So if you remember this slide, then you will be able to give the correct answer when we are discussing the question and answer session. Okay, then Woodward-Fisher selection rule for the calculation of lambda max. So in 1945, Woodward gave certain rules for calculating the lambda max value. It's a theoretical prediction. Okay, he has got a Nobel Prize in 1965 for outstanding achievement in the art of organic synthesis. And Fisher, so he is known for the synthesis of vitamin K. Okay, so in 1959, he modified these rules with more experimental data, and it is used to calculate the lambda max value by relating the position and degree of chromophore. Okay, so you should remember this value. Then only you will be able to solve the problems. Okay. So it is simplest. It's a simple one only. We will not worry about this if it is acyclic diene. Okay, it's a acyclic molecule. There's a diene, that is a conjugation. Diene means double bond. So if it is acyclic diene, the parent, that is a base value, is 217 nanometer. Okay, if it is heteroannular diene, I will show you what is heteroannular, what is homoannular. You remember the value. Heteroannular means it's 214 nanometer. It is a homoannular diene. Then the value is 253 nanometer. Please remember these three values. It is acyclic diene. Acyclic means, so this is acyclic, not a cyclic one. Okay, so this is acyclic diene molecule. The parent value, that is a base value, is 217 nanometer. Then if it is heteroannular diene, hetero means it's different. I will show you in the next slide. The value is 214 nanometer. So there is a decrement of 3 nanometer. And if it is homoannular, homo means the same. Okay, homoannular, the value is 253 nanometer. 217, 214, 253. Then there will be increment for substituents. If it is alkyl substituent or ring residue, the value is plus 5 nanometer. If it is exocyclic double bond, it is plus 5 nanometer. You have to add to this base value. And if there is a double bond extending conjugation, if there is any double bond extending means, you can see. So this is a conjugation. If it is, yeah, this is acyclic diene. So the value is 217 nanometer. Suppose if there is another conjugation, okay, so this is extra conjugation. So this is a double bond extending conjugation. Then you have to add plus 30. If there is halogens, you have to add plus 5 nanometer. I will explain with examples. Look at this. So this is acyclic diene. Okay. So alternative, double bond, single bond, double bond. You can see double bond. It's a single bond. It's a double bond. Then exocyclic double bond means. So exo means it's outside. Okay. Exo, it's outside. Here. So this is ring A. If you sit in the ring A, then look at this bond. So this is a exocyclic. It projects outwards to the ring. Okay. And this is endo. Endo means inside. Okay. Please remember exo, it is an outside. So outside of the ring, there is a double bond. So this is exocyclic double bond. And this is endo. You do not worry about this endo and all. And what is the ring residue or alkyl substituent? Both you are going to give the value of plus 5. Okay, you do not worry about this. What is the ring residue and alkyl substituents? So this is the conjugation. So this is the conjugation. You are starting from here. Here there is a substituents. Okay, here it is another substituent. Since it is in the ring, it is a ring residue. That's all. Okay, it is a part of the ring system. So it is a ring residue. And you are going through this way. Along the conjugation, you have to walk through. Okay, I'm going this side, here, here, and here it ends. The conjugation ends here. And look at this. Here one substituent. Here it is another substituent. So this is alkyl. Okay, there's no ring. So you can consider this alkyl substituent. So here only here you can see there are 4 substituents. So 4 into 5. For each alkyl substituent, you have to give 5. So totally 20 increment you have to give. So this is double bond extending conjugation means you can see this is one conjugation. Double bond, single bond, double bond. And you can see here it is the double bond, the extension of a conjugation. Here it's one conjugation and here is another conjugation. So this is double bond extending conjugation. So if there is any doubt, you can clarify with me. Hello. நான் அப்புறம் கூப்பிடுங்களா, கிளாஸ்ல இருக்கேன், நான் கால் பண்ணுவேன். You can see double bond extension. Sorry. So double bond extending conjugation. You can see. If there is any doubt in this slide.
Sir, please once again tell the number of increments in residue.
Increments. Yeah, okay, no problem. Look at this. So you have to go through the conjugation part. Here it is a conjugation part. Am I right? You can start from here. Okay, here there is a substituent, this one, and here it is another substituents. Substituents means, so there is a alkyl chain. Okay, CH2, CH2 is a substituent, and you can go through this way. Here there is one hydrogen, it is not a substituent. Okay, if there is any alkyl group, you can calculate. If it is CH3, you can count this is a alkyl substituent. Since it is hydrogen, you can easily neglect. Then go through this. Here is hydrogen, you can neglect, and here the conjugation ends. Here there are 2 alkyl substituents. So totally there are 4. 2 alkyl and 2 ring residue. So totally there are 4. You will understand when we are discussing the problems. Okay. So extending conjugation means, so this is a simple conjugation, double bond, single bond, double bond, and look at this. Here there are 2 alternatives in a double bond, single bond is there. So this is a double bond. So here 2 double bond extending conjugation. So this is homoannular. Homo means within the ring. So this is double bond, in alternative double bond, single bond, double bond is there. Homoannular. Heteroannular means, so the conjugation is in different ring. So this is ring A, this is ring B. You can see heteroannular, the conjugation is in the is present in the other ring also. So this is hetero. Homoannular means within the ring. Heteroannular conjugation is in the other part of the ring system also. Okay. Then enone and dienone. So this is the value for conjugated ketone. Okay. So if you remember the diene, it will be easy. I mean, it will be more useful for solving the problems. But if you know this ketone and all, it will be useful for higher studies. Okay, please forget these values and all, and remember this value. Double bond extending conjugation 39, homodienic, exocyclic double bond 5. Here, if there is a substituent at alpha position, you have to give 10. In the case of dienes, we have given only 5 increment for all the substituents. In the case of ketones and enone and dienone, if it is alpha position, you have to give 10 nanometer. If it is beta position, you have to give 12 nanometer. If it is gamma position, you have to give 80 nanometer. And this will be useful for appearing for CSAR and GATE examination. Okay. So as of now, you should remember this value only. For undergraduate level, mostly the problems will come from this diene only. Okay. So you should remember this value. So, okay. So we are going to calculate the lambda max value. That's a theoretical one using Woodward-Fisher selection rule. Woodward-Fisher rule. So this is a acyclic diene. Okay. So what is the base value for acyclic diene? What is the base value I have given in the slides? Acyclic diene. Okay, I'll show you. Then I'm going to calculate. This is the parent acyclic diene. So the value is 217 nanometer. Okay, then you have to calculate the substituents. So this is the conjugation path. How many alkyl residues are there, or alkyl substituents are there?
2.
Yeah, here it is 1. Going along this way, here it is 2. So there are 2 alkyl substituents. So what you have to do? 2 into 5, because for one alkyl substituent you have to give plus 5. Here there are 2, so 2 into 5, 10 nanometer. Then you have to look for whether there is any extending conjugation. Whether there is any extending
No.
conjugation double bond? No, because only double bond, single bond, double bond is there. Simple conjugations. Okay. There is no extending conjugation. Then whether there is any exocyclic double bond? Exo means where it comes only in the case of cyclic. Okay, here there is no exo. So only you have to calculate this parent value and alkyl substituents. So calculated value is 227 nanometer. Another example. So this is a cyclic or acyclic. This part is cyclic, but look at the conjugation. Look at this conjugation. Is it the part of cyclic? It is acyclic. Cyclic means if there is double bond within the ring system, okay, that is the ring. Then you have to go for a homoannular or heteroannular. So this is a parent acyclic diene. The value is 217 nanometer. Then what are the ring residues or alkyl substituents? How many ring substituents? So this is the conjugation part, and here one substituent, a ring residue, another ring residue. Going this pathway, there are no other substituents. Am I right? Here only CH2. So there are 2 ring residues. So 2 into 5, 10 nanometer. Then is there any exocyclic double bond? Exocyclic, ring A. So you have to sit inside the ring and you have to see is there any exocyclic double bond. You can sit here. You can see this side. So there is a exocyclic double bond. Exo means it's outside of the ring. There is a double bond. 1. Okay. So 1 exocyclic double bond. So 1 into 5, 5 nanometer. The total 234. It's a calculated lambda max value for this one. Is there any doubt in this example?
No, sir.
No. Look at this. Here. So this is a parent acyclic diene, because the conjugation is in the acyclic part, not in the ring system. So value is 217 nanometer. And look at the ring residues. How many ring residues are there? So you can circle this part and you can see 1, 2 substituents, alkyl residues. This way, here it is 1, 2. So totally there are 4 ring residues. So 4 into 5, 20 nanometer. Then exocyclic double bond. Exocyclic, what you have to do? You have to sit inside this ring, and this is ring B. Look at this from ring A. There is 1 exocyclic, and sit in the ring B. You can see. So this is another exocyclic. So there are 2 exocyclic double bond. So 2 into 5, 10 nanometer. Is there any extending conjugation? There is no extending conjugation. Okay, because there is a simple conjugation. If there is extending
Sir,
conjugation,
the exocyclic double bond means the double bond next to the cycle
ring,
group. That's
yeah,
enough.
ring path.
Okay, sir. Not
You
away,
cannot-
next to,
not-
just
yeah,
attached.
Yes, you cannot consider this as a exocyclic double bond with respect to ring A. Okay, ring A means exocyclic. It may be a double bond from this part, this carbon or this carbon, this carbon or this carbon. If it is, yeah, it is there. Okay, but you have to consider this double bond as exocyclic with respect to ring B. For ring B, this is exocyclic. For ring A, this is exocyclic. This should be the path of the ring system, not away from the ring system. Your question is correct. It should be the path of the ring system. Only 2. Then, whether this is a acyclic diene,
Cyclic.
yeah, it is cyclic because the conjugation is the ring system. So if there is a ring system, you have to consider whether this is a homoannular or heteroannular. Whether this is homoannular diene or heteroannular diene. Homo means within the ring there is a conjugation. Hetero means the conjugation is in different ring. Whether this is homo or heteroannular.
Heteroannular.
Yes, it is heteroannular because can see the conjugation is present in 2 different rings. So it's a heteroannular. What is the value for heteroannular?
Two 14 nanometer.
So sorry, 214. Yeah, 214. Then 214 nanometer for a parent heteroannular diene. Then you have to consider the ring residues. Okay, here. So this is the conjugation part. You have to circle this. Then you can start from this. Here there is one substituent, that is a ring residue. I'm going this way, and here this carbon, here another ring residue. I'm coming this way, here it is another ring residue. So there are totally 3 ring residues. So normally students are confused with the other substituents also. They may calculate this is a ring residue and this is another ring residue, this is another ring residue. This is the wrong way because there is no conjugation at all. So are you able to follow here? So you have to consider the ring residue along the conjugation path. So this is the conjugation and this is one ring residue, another ring residue, another ring residue. So there is no conjugation in this side. So you do not worry about the other alkyl substituents. So only 3 ring residues are there. So 3 into 5, 15 nanometer. Then we have to go for exocyclic double bond. Exocyclic, this is ring A, this is ring B. So you can sit the ring A, sit inside the ring A. Whether there is any exocyclic, means outside the ring, is there any double bond? Yes, it is there. Here you can see one double bond is there towards outside. So this is, what is this? This is endocyclic. So you cannot calculate this. Only you are going to calculate exocyclic. Okay, this is endo within the ring. Then you have to sit inside the ring B also. Ring A, this is ring B. Now you find out whether there is an exocyclic sitting inside B. Is there any exocyclic double bond?
One double bond.
Exocyclic. Exo means outside, which is a part of the ring system. I think you are considering this is as a exocyclic, not.
Sorry, sir. Okay.
You are a little bit confused. So you are sitting inside B, ring B, you have to see whether there is any exocyclic, because the double bond should be the part of this ring B. No. Okay. So only one exocyclic. Is there any extending conjugation? No, because there is a simple conjugation. There is no extra double bond here. If there is there is like this, then the value will be different. Here the value is 234 nanometer, and this is the part of eno alpha and beta. It is not necessary for undergraduate level. Then you can see this, whether there is acyclic or cyclic one. I'll take another 5 minutes so that I will continue from tomorrow morning also. I'll be discussing some questions from UV visible, and if time permits, I'll be taking another concept by tomorrow. Or if you want me to take another any different topic, you can let me know after the session is over, so that I can prepare a PPT for that also. So this is cyclic one. So cyclic means you have to consider whether it's a homoannular or heteroannular. Is this homoannular or heteroannular?
Homoannular.
Homoannular, because the conjugation is in the part of only one ring.
Double bond.
Okay. Yeah, double bond. There is a double conjugation means alternative double bond, single bond, double bond is inside the one ring only. Okay. So it is a homoannular. Homoannular means the base value is okay.
253.
I'll give the base value 253 nanometer. Then I have given 253 nanometer. Then you have to look for ring residue. Okay. So look at the conjugation. Can circle this one. A ring residue. There is one. And I'm coming this way, along this way. Here it is another ring residue. Here it is another ring residue. So there are 3 ring residues. So 3 into 5, 15 nanometer. Then exocyclic double bond. So this is ring A, this is ring B. Sit inside ring A. Look at is there any exocyclic double bond with respect to ring A?
No.
No, because there is no double bond is projecting outside of ring A. And with respect to ring B,
One.
sit inside the ring B. Look at this. Yeah, it is 1. There is one exocyclic double bond. It is not exocyclic. Okay, because it is not the part of the ring B. So it is the part of the ring B. It's projecting outwards. So there is one exocyclic double bond. So the total value is 273 nanometer. Okay. And look at this. So this is not the cyclic, this is not a part of acyclic one. So this is the cyclic. Whether this is homoannular or heteroannular.
Heteroannular.
Homoannular is also there. Consider ring A.
Yes, sir. Both.
Yeah. Then how do you give the base value? So if there is a case, you have to consider this is a homoannular diene, because conjugation is there. Okay, so you have to give the first preference to homoannular. So the base value for homoannular is 253 nanometer. Okay, I have given 253. Then you can go step by step. Then ring residue. Okay, so this is the part of the conjugation. So you can circle this and go from this way. There is one substituent ring residue and coming this along this way. Here it is 2 and coming here it is 3. So there are 3 ring residues. Okay, 3 into 5. Then is there any double bond extending conjugation? Extending conjugation. So this is a simple conjugation, and here you can see another extension of its conjugation. So there is one double bond extending conjugation. Am I clear? Are you able to follow this exocyclic? Then you have to calculate whether there is any exocyclic double bond. So this is ring A, this is ring B, ring C, and this is ring D. So you have to consider whether is there any exocyclic double bond for with respect to ring A. Is there any with respect to ring A? With respect to ring A means you have to sit inside the ring A. Then look for it.
With respect to A, there is no.
Yeah, with respect to A, there is no exocyclic. With respect to B, sit inside this ring B and look for it.
There is one.
Yeah, here it is. There is one. Then with respect to ring C,
No.
no. With respect to D also, there is no. Okay. Then you can calculate double bond extending conjugation. One is there. So you have to put 30 ring residue. So 303 nanometer. Okay. Then the remaining part and the question and answer will be discussing later.
Sorry,
And,
last problem.
I'll give you
Sir.
last problem. Yeah. This one.
ഇപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്ത 4 റിംഗ് ഉള്ള ഡി വരുന്നത് ഇപ്പൊ ദിസ് വൺ
Ring D.
സാർ ഇതിനകത്ത് നമ്മള് ഹോമോ അനുലാർ ഡൈൻ എന്നല്ലേ എടുത്തേക്കുന്നത് ഇതിനെ പേരന്റ്
Yeah.
ബട്ട്
Yes.
there is also then what we mean hetero annular.
No. If there is, here it is homoannular. It is there. If you consider this part, it's a heteroannular. Okay. When the problem arises, you can consider this as a homoannular diene. If both
Okay, sir, we consider.
homoannular and heteroannular is there, give the homoannular. You can take homoannular as the parent value, as a base value. Okay.
Okay,
Is it
sir.
clear? Yeah. Then I'll give you a problem you can solve.
Sir, pinne hello sir.
Yeah. Tell me.
Sir, reactions of aldehyde,
Yeah, tell me.
ketone, carboxylic acids may be included in the organic part.
Organic part, but it will take 2 or 3 more sessions for particularly for carbonyl compounds.
Okay, sir. The major entrance oriented reactions.
Yeah, okay. The important reactions.
The name
Yes, sir.
reactions part.
Naming reactions. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to take by tomorrow the naming reactions, and also I'll be discussing some questions from IIT JAM. And now I'm going to look at the questions here. There are so many questions from here you can see the TFR questions. An IIT JAM question is there. Pondicherry University also there is some questions. Yeah. So you can take a screenshot of this slide. So what is the lambda max of the following compound? So this is a question asked in Cochin University of Science and Technology in 2014. They have given the value also. So in some questions they have not given. Okay. So you have to calculate the lambda max value. Take a screenshot and you can work it out. So I will be discussing the answers tomorrow morning. So if you are having any problem with the calculation of lambda max value using Woodward-Fisher rule, please let me know so that I will clarify. Okay. Is there any doubt from today's session? So we can wind up. So we can wind up now. Thank you all. Thank you.